I do.
Sweet. I've been waiting a year for this.
Where shall we reconvene?
I mean, the regular
Okay,
board,
we should be
it's
live.
gotta be, don't you think?
Did Canada open as scheduled or not? I thought they were going to open the
All
4th.
right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And the first item of business would be approval of minutes. Well, let's actually stop, and before we go into the formal business, I heard a couple of you talking about Talon, and I think it would be appropriate to have a moment of silence in memory of Talon and his service to the city. Thank you. All right, now we'll go on to the first item of business, and that would be the approval of minutes from our last meeting. Kevin distributed those, thank you. And so is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Can I ask who moved?
Joe, Haberger.
Thanks, Joe.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll go on to the next item, which would be the updates on the various projects. So those of you, Jonathan or Aaron or Thomas, anybody who wants to jump in, please go ahead and start.
Yes, sir. Through the president to the commission. The first one, it looks like, is Shoreline Park. Unfortunately, I think I may have added these things before we got flooded out last Friday. But Shoreline Park project was pretty much done. We've got to go out and do some cleanup now still. Put some of the stone back to where it was. I think the adult fitness equipment is going in. We had to order a couple new pieces for that equipment, but the work at Shoreline Park for the shoreline stabilization was completed over the past month. So we did a few parking lot repairs as well. I don't have anything else on that one. I just wanted to update this group, and if anybody had any questions, I'd feel free to ask and I can answer.
Aaron, I presume that it stayed pretty much intact. I know we drove through there about 2:30 on Friday before they closed off the parking lot. It looked like the east side was taking a pretty good beating. Is there any thought to bring that protection further down south on the east side of Shoreline Park?
Yeah, so we would love to be able to extend that concrete. We've already had conversations about how we could possibly extend a walkway through the park itself. There's really not a good way to get to that north end unless you're walking in the driveway that gets back there. But really the only thing that happened out there, that the concrete stayed really, in good shape. The big rock that was put down on all the fingers were in good shape. The stone that was along that eastern side of the western finger did wash out. We do have to put some of that back in. That's obviously going to be a continuous problem as waves go over the shore there. So we would love to be able to, in the future, through the park planning with Jason Whirling and Jonathan, to come up with a way to possibly find some money to extend the concrete and maybe put some sidewalks in on that eastern side of that western finger as well. Now, the contractor is going out to clean up a little bit. I think he might have to plant some more, but we're really struggling with the geese this year. It seems like every goose that has been here the last 5 years just had another 5 or 6 little, I'll just call them geese right now, other than what I want to call them.
Goslings.
That's not what I wanted to call it either.
Goslings, yes. Yeah. And they're being well fed by well-intentioned people. I noticed, in spite of all of the signs, that there was a couple of families feeding geese in down on not on Shoreline, but on the old pavilion there. So um, they're going to be well fed no matter what we do, I guess.
How about providing some grain that won't permit the geese to reproduce?
Hey, I like that's probably the best idea, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions on other questions on Shoreline? Thank you, Aaron. We'll continue on down the agenda. And I'm having trouble printing my copy, so.
I can take it, Mr. President. The next one, I believe, is the transient marina.
Okay.
I wanted to give an update on that one too. We've been monitoring a slight movement of the concrete on the eastern side of the pathway between the Chesapeake and the marina for the past couple of years. And it got to a point that we wanted to make sure that we fixed it and repaired it. It looks like it could cause a problem for people on bikes or strollers, for wheels that are relatively thin that could get stuck in there. And to avoid injury, what we're planning on doing is we're going to do a first phase of a project to cut out a few feet of that and then anchor it back in. We think what's happening is the concrete, the outside slab of concrete is settling into the marina and it's moving slightly. We're not exactly sure how solid the fill underneath it was. We did some borings and did some investigation, but we're really not going to know until we remove a couple feet, a strip of that outer slab of concrete. So we're hoping to do that over the next couple months. We have a contractor lined up just to do the first portion of it to see what happens. And if we need to extend it to another portion, we will, based on what we find. But right now, we're looking at spending a little bit of money to do that. We also noticed that as the Shoreline the Shoreline Drive project completed, there was about 15, 20 feet of concrete that was missing from connecting the sidewalk that goes into the transient marina to the bike path on the western side of the western drive apron at the transient marina. So as part of that project, we're also going to fill that in to make sure that people can get from the bike path up to dockside or wherever they want to go around that marina. So I just want you guys to be aware that if you do see work out there over the next month or two, that we are going to be trying to do some maintenance improvements and repairs out at that marina.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the transient marina? All right, we'll continue on Shoreline Drive and Jackson Street Pier.
Yes, sir. Every time I think I'm taking this off the list, I just want to keep you guys updated that if you see work going on out there, we are still working with the contractor on warranty items and punch list items. One item that you guys may have seen behind the West Marine, they excavated some of the pavement. The reason was because our IT department was trying to get pull strings pushed through the fiber conduit that was installed for the project for future use. And it turns out that the contractor hadn't connected 2 of the conduits. So we called them up, had them come back out, and they had to dig and find it. Luckily, it was not in the sidewalk, it was in the asphalt, and it was a relatively easy fix for them. A couple other last remaining items on those two projects are the landscaping. We did a walkthrough on both of those projects to make sure that the landscaping that was planted last year took. The Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive, there were a few items that had died, so they were called out to replace those. We walked the site with both of them, so if you do see them replacing plants, that's the reason. What I can say is I walked the pier yesterday and it looked like the water from last week pulled a lot of the plants up. A lot of the smaller vegetation that was planted on the north and on the east side pulled it out. So our guys are going to be going back out, our field crews from the greenhouse, Amy and Tom and even some of the seasonal help that we have for downtown or in the greenhouse are going to be going back out and replanting, resecuring those, and making sure that the root balls aren't exposed. And then once we get a comfort level that the water's going to stay where it is, we should be able to maybe put a thin layer of mulch back on top of it. And what I can say, though, is what everybody was concerned about previously was that the water that came up last week, which a lot of people said they hadn't seen it that high since 1969 floods, wasn't even close to the Mylander Pavilion building that's on the Jackson Street Pier. So that's good news. We feel we got it. We raised it to where we should through this committee, through the other boards and commissions, through the discussions with the contractor. It looks like we have that in the spot that it should be. Despite a major, hopefully not having a major catastrophe and extreme water level rise, we should be in good shape with where that one is.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question about that. Mr. Chairman? You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
I noticed that and hit it twice. Too quick. Yes, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't remember, or maybe remind all of us, the pavilion wound up being at, what, 2 feet above the 100-year, or at the 100-year, or what level did we finally wind up with after that discussion?
Yes, through the chairman. I saw somebody the other day with a T-shirt on it that said "You're muted" right down the front. But we moved that completely outside of the floodplain, so we moved it farther south, and it's slightly above where it needed to be, but almost right at the 575. It's like 575.2 or something like that. Right. So we moved it really outside of the floodplain, but we did not have to do the extra 2 foot of freeboard that the ordinance currently requires because we moved it to that location. Right. It would have, doing the extra 2 feet, we looked at that, it would have added another $100 and some thousand to it. We would have had to have put stairs and walkway around it, getting down to it, had to put a ADA ramp to get up to it. It would have just completely changed the project.
And in the event we saw, the event we saw this past weekend, that wasn't a 100-year event, or was it? I doubt if it was. Maybe you don't know yet. I guess we call it. We're going to be calling it a 1% chance event, but
through the chair, I don't think we can call it anything really, because those rain events are based on the amount of rain that we got. What we saw this weekend was not the volume of rain that fell, it was the nor'easter winds pushing the water over the shore. So I don't know if we can call it any specific type of rain event, but I can say that the water levels were higher than what any rain event I've seen in the 8 years I've been here.
Right. I thought it was interesting that the static water levels I'm going to estimate 1.5 feet lower than it was last year. And I'm just happy that this didn't happen last year this time, because it would have been much more interesting.
It was quite interesting as it was, Michael, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Come to Cedar Point. Check out what's going on over here.
Right. Okay, any other questions or comments for Aaron regarding the Jackson Street Pier or Shoreline Drive? Okay, we'll go on to Meg Street then.
Yes, through the chair. So Meg Street, I just wanted to give you a quick update that we are still proceeding with that project as planned. We have stage 2 plans being completed by fall of this year. So we are still moving forward. As you've seen on the west end of the city, it's no longer on the agenda, but on the west end, the bike path is nearly open in front of Toss on Venice Road, all the way down to Cold Creek. We don't have the banners up. We're still working through details with AT&T on that one. But next year's plan is to open the portion on Meg's of the bike path. So we are still moving forward with that. We're in design phase. We're talking to all the businesses and everybody along that route that could be affected by this project and the bike path and the widening and everything else. So I just wanted you guys to be aware that we're still moving forward with that project as the year progresses, and we hope to bid that project around December or even maybe January, February of next year.
Through you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, just a comment. The bike path on the west end, Toffs on down, seemed to get a lot of social media buzz, maybe perceived to be critical and so forth. But I just wanted to report that among friends and family kind of pushing back against that, my daughter who lives out there says, who obviously drives it multiple times daily, every time she goes by, there's somebody using it, that it seems to be greatly appreciated. And in spite of the naysayers, I think it's a great asset that's appreciated by a lot of people.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know what the negativity was on social media, but I'm guessing it was probably about the placement of the mailboxes. And we were very limited on what we could do out there. And to your point, I saw the paving crews out there laying down the base course of asphalt, not even the surface course of asphalt, a month and a half ago, whenever that was. And there was a gentleman on a bike, probably about 30 yards behind them, already on the base course that was still steaming. So I knew it was going to get quite a bit of use at that point. And I know in discussions with Toffs, they're pretty excited about it.
It's a great thing. I haven't been on it myself, but we're looking forward, when weather permits, to ride our bicycles on that.
Harleys are not permitted. All right.
All right. Any questions on the bike path or anything related to the west end, since Aaron brought that up, in addition to Meg Street?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And I guess for Aaron, I think you were talking about this, but I'm looking for a little more clarification in my muddled mind that the route on Meg Street, and there's really no current, where are we with going on the route of that? Is it going down to First Street on Meg's and taking a left, or is there some other thought of other contingencies? And then from there, it goes on down to to Kiwanis Park, where they have the crossover going over the Cedar Point ramp thing. Is that currently the plan still?
Yes, sir, through the chairman. So I took the landing and the pathway off of this agenda, but I should probably just leave it on for the future, just for questions' sake, even though a lot of the stuff that we're doing is really just a repeat of we're working through acquisition phase, and hopefully we can ramp that up over the next year and zero in on those things. We are getting closer on the landing, but as we were going through the design on the Sandusky Bay pathway piece and looking at how to tie in Meigs and First Street, we looked at what the pathway plan had showed, and it showed that you couldn't tie in Meigs and First very well. So as we were going through design, we kind of disregarded that and wanted to push through because that's the logical connection point is on that, I guess you'd call it the northern corner of Meigs and First. But we just, with that church being so close, we either had to remove a lot of the frontage on the church and have the bike path be right adjacent to the wall, or we had to remove a turn lane of traffic on First Street. And neither of those options seemed like very good options. So what we're looking at is following on First Street, following the old pier track rail bed and heading that back towards where Lockwood, the northerly extension, the northerly terminus of Lockwood, where it hits, I believe it's Cove Boulevard or maybe Cove Park Boulevard. So we're trying to get that connection at that location. And what you'll see on our recent street resurfacing project for this year is we are looking at those roads in that neighborhood, specifically Cove Park Boulevard, Lockwood are on the list as well. And part of the reason is because what we're looking at on Meigs right now is terminating the bike path at Sycamore Street, which is where the big hook artwork is on the corner there that was put in a few years ago. So it'll come down Meigs, terminate at Sycamore, and then we're looking at snaking it through that neighborhood. And there's a little alley that's, I believe that's Cove Boulevard maybe. It's a small alley that kind of connects the two boathouse neighborhoods. And we're looking at snaking it through there and over to Lockwood. So hopefully next year we'll have it terminated near that Lockwood neighborhood through Lockwood Road and then coming through that neighborhood over to Meigs. But we couldn't find a way to connect it, so we had to find a way through those back neighborhoods to get it down to First Street. And honestly, we rode that last year, and the uniqueness of those neighborhoods and the beauty of those neighborhoods really provides an experience that you can't really get anywhere on the bike path unless you go off route and go through those neighborhoods. So we're excited to have it signed and designated for the bike path to get it back down to First Street. But next year we'll terminate it here in that Lockwood, Anderson, Cove Park Boulevard area until we can finish the connection on First Street.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm really excited about that. When we rode that stretch, that's what we just naturally did anyway, kind of orienteer through that neighborhood. And I agree that there's a whole lot of people in the world that have no concept of what like a boathouse neighborhood is like. That I lived around this town a long time before I came to understand that. That's a real uniqueness feature that is very positive about Sandusky. It's just, it's marvelous.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, so I think the concept has always been, I thought it was written, and if it isn't, I think it's understood that the pathway the concept has always been, and the practice has been that it follows the shoreline as closely as possible. And so this is just an example of doing that. This is not about, the circle tour where you spun around the Great Lakes at the greatest speed possible on the interstates. It's more like with the coastal trail, taking the cars as close as possible, and that's the principle that should be here. And I'm glad that we're finding thoughtful and creative ways to do that. Good work.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah. Any other comments on the bike path?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Bill.
is the possibility of using the actual pier track completely off the program these days?
Through the chairman to Dr. Siemens, that is definitely not off the table. That is something that we're still pursuing, and we're still looking at moving forward with that portion of the project. We still have that under contract. That is one piece that we did not include in the final design phase of the existing contract. We didn't know where it would go. We didn't know how long it would take to leaf through all of our documents, but that is definitely not off the table. We still plan to move forward with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All good. All good info. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the Peely Islander then.
Unfortunately, this is something that I don't know if we have good news or bad news on still. The border is still closed, is my understanding. Even at that, we're still with weekly discussions with the folks from the Ministry of Transportation in Ontario, their federal government. We've gotten Peely Island Township government involved as well, and we're trying to figure out exactly how and when. I haven't heard anything from them, but about when they would open, anything concrete. But what I am hearing is that even when the border does open, their boat operators, their captains are part of a union that they have to still get back to work and then bring the boat in on a test run and then get the dock certified. And there's belief that there might need to be some stabilization that is provided within the boat slip, but we can't know that until they bring the boat in on that test run. They did a test run last year, and they love what they see out there, but they may need to add one or two more things. So I'm not sure if they're going to operate this year. They won't tell me no, regardless of whether the dock opens, but we're really leaving everything in their hands because we're, as you know, completely done with the project. We've been in discussions with Homeland Security. Their building looked pretty good after last weekend's waves crashing over, filling that slip as well. But we're just taking direction from them, so everything is in their hands at this point. We're meeting with them weekly or every other week. They're trying to figure out other things as well. Who's going to be selling tickets on the U.S. side, those types of things. So there's a lot of the administrative issues that they need to work out and work through the details as well. So we're trying as hard as we can to work through this pandemic that seems to be lingering on some fronts, and one of the fronts is that international travel. So I just wanted to give you an update on that, and as we have progress, if I hear anything about opening, closing, those types of things, I'll certainly bring it back to this group.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Any questions on the Pelee Islander status? Understandable with all of the different rules with international travel at this point. A lot of confusion. Programming at the pier.
Yeah. Hi, guys. It's
Morning, Mr.
Mackenzie here. Huh. Let me see how I can get this up on your screen.
Well,
I usually do this from my computer, so this is like a different lineup.
while she's working on bringing that up, can I just mention that I just had a pop-up on my wow system or under that we are 13 days away from the 1-year ribbon cutting on Shoreline Drive in the Jackson Street Pier. So we're not even a year into it being officially open.
Amazing.
Well, guys, I had a presentation to show you so that you could see some of the amenities that we bought. Tom is texting me right now. Do you want me to put it on my computer? Hey, so, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
would you like to swap the order real fast and maybe Tom can go and I
Let's move
can
on.
send it to him?
We'll give you a technology break here, and we'll go on to the DORA and come back to programming after
Okay.
that. So, update on the DORA.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, thank you for having us here this morning. And I know we brought this before this committee, I think a few months ago, just very briefly to talk about the conceptual idea. We also brought this before the Planning Commission, and subsequent to that, there have been many additional public engagement opportunities with bar and restaurant owners, residents, and a lot of other people in the community. And so we submitted, or the city administration submitted an application to the city commission for the creation of the outdoor refreshment area pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code requirements. And that, as of now, is scheduled to go to city commission on June 14th. The entirety of the application is online. We did put a notice in the Sandusky Register that people can view the entirety of the application. Go to citiesofsandusky.com/DORA, DORA. It is all listed online there. For those of you who may not recall, what this does is it creates